It all started in Boston, a city of history, of cobblestone streets and old secrets. For one little girl, born Honora Kelly in 1854, the city held no promise, only hardship. Her parents were Irish immigrants. They had come to America looking for a new life. But what they found was tragedy. Her mother died of consumption when Honora was just a little girl, a terrible loss. Her father, a man known as Kelly the Crack, was left to raise the children. He was a tailor, but his mind was said to be unraveling. His behavior was erratic, unstable. Some whispered he was simply mad. The weight of it all became too much for Peter Kelly. In 1864, he took his two youngest daughters, Honora and her sister Delia, to the Boston Female Asylum, an orphanage, a place for children with nowhere else to go. He left them there, walked away, and never looked back. The girls were abandoned, left to the care of strangers. The asylum was a harsh place, strict rules, cold comfort. It was a world away from a loving home. Delia, her sister, would later be committed to an asylum for the insane, a dark foreshadowing, perhaps, of what was to come. For Honora, it was the start of a long, lonely road. Life took another turn when Honora was indentured, a common practice back then. She went to live with the Topham family in Lowell, Massachusetts. They gave her a new name, Jane, a fresh start, or so it seemed. But she was never truly one of them. Not a daughter, she was a servant. Mrs. Ann Topham was a stern woman, demanding. Jane's childhood was filled with chores, not affection. She watched the Topham's daughter, Elizabeth, live a life of privilege, a life Jane could only dream of. The resentment began to build, a quiet, simmering anger, a feeling of being an outsider, always looking in. As a young woman, Jane was described as bright, even charming. But beneath the surface, something was wrong. She was a known liar, a teller of tall tales. She once claimed her father had sailed around the world, that her sister had married an English nobleman. She even spread a rumor that her foster sister, Elizabeth, had a child out of wedlock. These were not just harmless fibs. They were attempts to manipulate, to create a reality more exciting than her own. It was a sign, a warning, a hint of the darkness that was growing inside the girl who would one day be known as Jolly Jane, a name that would become infamous. In 1885, at the age of 31, Jane Topham decided to become a nurse, a noble profession, a calling to care for the sick and the vulnerable. She enrolled at the Cambridge Hospital School of Nursing in Massachusetts. It was a chance to finally gain respect, to be someone important. She was older than the other students, but she was eager, she worked hard, she seemed dedicated. Her instructors and fellow students saw a woman who was cheerful, outgoing, always ready with a joke or a kind word. They gave her a nickname, Jolly Jane. It fit her perfectly, or so they thought. She was a good student. She learned quickly. She seemed to have a natural talent for nursing. Patients loved her. She was attentive, compassionate. She would sit by their bedsides for hours, holding their hands, comforting them. Families were grateful for her dedication. She seemed like the perfect nurse, a true angel of mercy. But even then, there were whispers. Strange things happened when Jane was on duty. Patients would suddenly take a turn for the worse. Some would die unexpectedly, but she was always there, calm and collected, ready to help. No one suspected a thing. Behind the cheerful smile, Jane was conducting experiments, twisted, secret experiments. She was fascinated by the medications in the hospital's dispensary, especially the powerful narcotics, morphine, atropine. She would alter patients' charts, change their prescribed doses. She wanted to see what would happen. She would give them just enough poison to bring them close to death. Then she would bring them back. A thrilling game of push and pull, a dance with mortality. She later confessed she got a sexual thrill from it. The feeling of power was intoxicating. She held their lives in her hands. Despite the rumors and the unusually high number of deaths on her watch, Jane graduated. In 1887, she began working as a private nurse. This gave her even more freedom, more opportunity. She moved from family to family, caring for the elderly, the sick, the unsuspecting. Her reputation as Jolly Jane went with her. She was highly recommended. Everyone said she was a wonderful nurse, so kind, so caring. No one could imagine the truth, that the woman they invited into their homes was not an angel of mercy. She was a predator, and she was just getting started. The years passed. From 1895 to 1901, Jane Toppan moved through the quiet homes of Massachusetts like a phantom. She was the trusted caregiver, the friendly face in the sick room. But she brought death with her. Her methods were subtle, devious. She used her nursing knowledge to kill. Her weapons of choice were morphine and atropine, a deadly combination. She would mix the poisons into a glass of water or a dose of medicine. It looked like an act of kindness, a moment of care, but it was murder. She knew just how much to give, enough to stop a heart, but not enough to raise immediate suspicion. Her victims were often her patients, people who trusted her completely. She would watch them drift away. She later told police that she enjoyed it. She would even get into bed with her female victims, hold them in her arms as they died. She said it gave her a sense of power, a thrill, to be so close to death, to be the one in control. It was a chilling confession, a window into a deeply disturbed mind. She wasn't just killing them, she was performing a ritual, a private, macabre ceremony, the ultimate violation of trust between a nurse and a patient. But her victims weren't just patients. As time went on, her rage and resentment boiled over. She targeted people from her past. In 1899, she poisoned her foster sister, Elizabeth Toppan Brigham, the woman she had grown up with, the woman she had always envied. She did it while supposedly nursing Elizabeth back to health after a minor surgery. A final, cruel act of jealousy. She also killed landlords, friends, and fellow nurses, anyone who annoyed her, anyone who got in her way. The motives were sometimes petty, a disagreement over rent, a rivalry at work. For Jane, murder was the solution. She confessed to at least 31 murders, but authorities believed the true number could be much higher, possibly over 100. She had been a nurse for years, moving from place to place, leaving a trail of death in her wake. It was a staggering number, almost unbelievable. How could one woman kill so many people for so long without being caught? The answer was simple. No one wanted to believe it. A nurse was supposed to be a healer. A woman was supposed to be a nurturer. Jane Toppan shattered those assumptions. She was a monster hiding in plain sight. What makes a person do such things? What turns a caregiver into a killer? With Jane Toppan, the answers are complex and deeply disturbing. Her motives were a twisted mix of power, control, and a chilling kind of pleasure. She told her interrogators that her ambition was to have killed more people, helpless people, than any other man or woman who ever lived. It was a competition, a horrifying scoreboard where the points were human lives. She wasn't killing for money, or for revenge in most cases. She was killing for the sake of killing. It was her life's work. Psychologists who studied her case pointed to her traumatic childhood, the abandonment, the abuse, the feeling of being worthless. These early experiences may have created a deep-seated rage, a desire to exert power over others. In the sick room, she was no longer the helpless orphan. She was in control. She could decide who lived and who died. It was the ultimate power, a way to feel important, to feel like a god. The patients were weak, vulnerable, just as she had once been. But now she held their fate in her hands. It was a terrible, twisted form of empowerment. There was also a clear element of sadism in her crimes. She didn't just want her victims to die. She wanted to watch them suffer, to see the life drain from their eyes. She described the experience with a detached, clinical fascination. She experimented with different doses of poison, observing the effects on the human body. The act of holding her victims as they died suggests a disturbing need for intimacy, a grotesque parody of a loving embrace. It was a way to possess them in their final moments, to make their death entirely about her. Did she feel any remorse? Any guilt? By all accounts, no. She confessed to her crimes with a strange sense of pride, as if she were recounting her greatest achievements. She saw her victims not as people, but as objects, pawns in her deadly game. This complete lack of empathy is a hallmark of psychopathy. She simply could not connect with the pain and suffering she caused. To her, it was all just an interesting experiment, a way to pass the time, a way to satisfy the darkness that had taken root in her soul so many years ago. The summer of 1901, a season that should have been full of warmth and life. For the Davis family of Catormet, a small village on Cape Cod, it would be a season of unimaginable horror. Jane Topham had been hired to care for the family's matriarch, Alden Davis's wife, Mattie. Jane had been the family's trusted nurse for years. She was like one of them, Jolly Jane, always so helpful, so reliable. No one could have predicted the tragedy that was about to unfold. It began on a quiet day in July. Mattie Davis, who had been recovering from an illness, suddenly died. It was a shock. But she had been sick. People console themselves, but the dying didn't stop. Just a few weeks later, one of Alden Davis's married daughters, Genevieve Gordon, came to visit. She was grieving her mother. Jane was there to comfort her, to offer a shoulder to cry on. Then Genevieve, a healthy young woman, fell ill. Within days, she too was dead. The family was devastated. 2 deaths in such a short time. It seemed like a terrible coincidence, a cruel twist of fate. But Jane was still there, ever the dutiful nurse, taking care of everything, taking care of everyone. She was the calm at the center of the storm. The grief was overwhelming. Alden Davis, the patriarch, was heartbroken. He leaned on Jane for support. She managed the household. She comforted the remaining family members. She seemed indispensable. Then another of his daughters, Minnie Gibbs, came to stay. She was there to help her father and sort through her mother's things. And then the unthinkable happened again. Minnie complained of feeling unwell. Jane, of course, was right there to nurse her. A few days later, Minnie was dead. 3 women, from the same family, all dead within weeks. It was too much to be a coincidence. Finally, Alden Davis himself became the target. Jane prepared him a meal, a bowl of soup. He took a few spoonfuls, but said it tasted bitter. He couldn't eat it. That simple act of refusal probably saved his life. Jane, perhaps sensing that her time was running out, then presented him with a bill for her nursing services. It was a large sum. Too large. Alden Davis, now deeply suspicious, refused to pay. He had lost his wife and 2 of his daughters, and the one common thread, the one person present for every death, was the nurse, Jolly Jane. The questions had finally begun. The web of lies was starting to come apart. After the death of his daughter Minnie Gibbs, her father-in-law, a captain named Gibbs, grew deeply suspicious. He had seen Minnie just days before her death. She had been perfectly healthy. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. He spoke with Alden Davis. Together they voiced their concerns. The string of deaths in the Davis family was too neat, too convenient. And Jane Topham was always there, the ever-present, smiling nurse. They decided to take action. They demanded a toxicology examination on Minnie's body. The request was unusual, but the circumstances were more than unusual. They were terrifying. Authorities agreed to exhume Minnie Gibbs's body. The results of the autopsy were shocking. They confirmed the men's darkest fears. Minnie's body contained lethal doses of morphine and atropine. She had been poisoned. It was murder. The investigation immediately focused on one person, the last person to care for Minnie, the nurse who'd been present for all the recent deaths in the family, Jane Topham. The picture of the cheerful, dedicated caregiver was beginning to crumble. On October 29, 1901, the police came for Jane. They found her at the home of her late foster sister, Elizabeth, in Amherst, New Hampshire. They arrested her for the murder of Minnie Gibbs. At first, she denied everything. She was calm, composed. She was Jolly Jane, the respected nurse. Why would she do such a thing? But the evidence was mounted. Investigators began to look back at her career, at the dozens of other suspicious deaths that had occurred under her care. A pattern began to emerge, a long, dark trail of poison and death that stretched back for years. Faced with the undeniable scientific evidence and the growing list of potential victims, Jane's composure finally broke. She began to talk, and once she started, she couldn't stop. She confessed everything, not just to killing Minnie Gibbs, but to killing dozens of others. She recounted the murders in chilling detail, the patients, the friends, her foster sister. She seemed almost proud of her work. She corrected the police on the number of victims, wanting to make sure her full accomplishment was known. The confession painted a horrifying portrait of a woman who had used her position of trust to become one of history's most prolific female serial killers. The trial began in the summer of 1902. It was a media sensation. Newspapers across the country followed every detail. The story of the killer nurse was both horrifying and fascinating. The public was captivated. How could a woman, a caregiver, be capable of such evil? The courtroom in Barnstable, Massachusetts, was packed every day. People craned their necks to get a glimpse of the infamous Jolly Jane. She sat there calmly, an unassuming woman in her late 40s. It was hard to believe she was the monster described in the papers. She looked so ordinary, so normal. Her defense team knew they couldn't deny the murders. Jane had confessed. The evidence was overwhelming, so they chose a different strategy. They argued that she was not guilty by reason of insanity. They painted a picture of a woman broken by a traumatic childhood, a woman whose mind had been warped by years of abuse and neglect. They brought in experts, alienists as they were called back then. They testified that Jane was morally insane, that she did not have the capacity to understand that her actions were wrong. It was a controversial defense, but it was their only hope. The prosecution, of course, argued the opposite. They claimed Jane Toppan was sane, cunning, and evil. They presented her detailed confessions as proof. She knew exactly what she was doing. She planned her murders carefully. She chose her victims. She used her nursing skills to kill without being detected. This wasn't madness, they argued, it was calculated cruelty. They called witness after witness to testify about the string of deaths that followed Jane wherever she went. The story they told was of a cold-blooded predator who hid behind a friendly smile. The jury was left to decide. Was she mad, or was she just plain bad? On June 23, 1902, the jury delivered its verdict. It took them less than half an hour. They found Jane Toppan not guilty by reason of insanity. She would not be sent to prison. She would not be executed. Instead, the judge committed her for life to the Taunton Insane Hospital. For some, it was a just outcome, a recognition that a person who could do such things must be mentally ill. For others, it felt like she had gotten away with murder. They believed she was sane enough to know right from wrong, and that she deserved a harsher punishment for the lives she had taken. Jane Toppan entered the Taunton Insane Hospital, and the door closed behind her. She would spend the rest of her life there. More than 3 decades. The woman who had craved power and control was now a patient herself, stripped of her freedom, confined to the grounds of the asylum. But even there, she remained a figure of fascination and fear. The staff and other patients knew who she was. They knew what she had done. They watched her carefully. There were rumors that she once told her attendants, "Get some morphine, dearie, and we'll go out in the ward. You and I will have a lot of fun seeing them die." Life in the asylum was monotonous, a stark contrast to the drama and excitement she had created for herself in the outside world. Her days were structured, regulated. The thrill of her deadly game was gone. For years, she refused to eat the food provided by the hospital. She was terrified that someone would try to poison her. A deep, paranoid irony. The poisoner now lived in constant fear of being poisoned herself. It was a lonely and fearful existence, a far cry from the respected, cheerful nurse she had once pretended to be. the mask of Jolly Jane was gone for good. The public's fascination with her case slowly faded. The sensational headlines were replaced by new stories, new scandals. Jane Toppan became a ghost, a cautionary tale whispered among nurses and townspeople. But she was not forgotten. Her case left a deep scar on the public consciousness. It raised uncomfortable questions about trust, about the vulnerability of the sick, and about the nature of evil. How could it hide so effectively behind a kind face? The case forced people to confront the idea that women too were capable of unimaginable violence. It challenged the Victorian ideal of women as gentle, nurturing creatures. Jane Toppan died in the asylum in August 1938. She was 84 years old. She had outlived most of her contemporaries. She had spent nearly half her life locked away, a prisoner of the institution and of her own dark mind. Her death was quiet, unremarkable, a stark contrast to the chaos and terror she had caused during her years as a nurse. The final chapter in the story of Jolly Jane was a quiet, lonely end. A long, slow fade into obscurity for a woman who once dreamed of being the most prolific killer in history. The story of Jane Toppan did not end with her death. It lives on. A chilling reminder that appearances can be dangerously deceptive. She was Jolly Jane, the smiling, cheerful nurse, the person you would trust with your life. And that was her greatest weapon. Her case served as a brutal wake-up call. It forced the medical community and the public to look more critically at the people they placed in positions of trust. It showed that even in a profession dedicated to healing, a predator could thrive. Her crimes led to changes in how medications were controlled in hospitals and how nurses were screened. The case also had a profound impact on how society viewed women. In the early 20th century, the idea of a female serial killer was almost unthinkable. Women were seen as the gentler sex, the nurturers, the caregivers. Jane Toppan's crimes shattered that illusion. She was not a passive victim of circumstance. She was an active, intelligent, and ruthless killer. Her story fascinated and horrified the public in equal measure because it flew in the face of everything they thought they knew about gender and violence. She became a symbol of a new, terrifying kind of female criminality. Her legacy is a complex one. On one hand, she is a monster, a figure of pure evil who took pleasure in the suffering of others. Her name is listed alongside the most infamous serial killers in history, a warning from the past about the darkness that can lurk in the human heart. Her confessions provide a rare, if terrifying, glimpse into the mind of a psychopath, a mind devoid of empathy, remorse, or compassion. It is a story that forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that some people are simply wired differently, that they do not feel what we feel. But there is another lesson in the story of Jolly Jane. It is a story about the power of a smile, the power of trust, and how easily both can be betrayed. Jane Toppan reminds us that evil does not always come with a frightening face. It can wear a nurse's uniform. It can offer a kind word. It can hold your hand and promise to make you feel better. Her story is a timeless and important warning to look beyond the surface, to question what we see, and to remember that sometimes the most dangerous monsters are the ones who look just like us,